Hey guys, it's Firefly, and today I'm going to be drawing one of my favorite characters I've done so far. This guy doesn't actually have a name. He's just the ringmaster for a traveling carnival. Now this carnival actually doesn't appear for quite some time. It's much closer to the end of my book, so it's kind of sad that he's not a big part of it, but I still really enjoyed making this character. This pose I have for him was originally for some personal art that I just wanted to do without. I didn't really have a plan for it. I just wanted to draw something, but when I saw the pose finished, I was like, this is perfect for him. I'm gonna go ahead and draw him. So that's part of the reason I jumped ahead of the game and drew him now rather than later. So there were two things I knew this character was going to have when I started. One was a carnival hat of some sort, since he is a ringleader. He's got to have that big old hat. And the second thing was a cane, which I originally mainly just had for the pose itself, but I wanted him to have a cane anyway, so that worked out perfectly. Drawing his mouth is probably one of the hardest parts for this character. I couldn't decide what I really wanted because I knew I wanted him to have face paint and glasses, but I was considering giving him a mask of some sort since he does care for a lot of dangerous magical creatures. So I was thinking some sort of monster mask or like fangs or like a snake tongue or something like that. But I ended up deciding it took too much away from his glasses and face paint and just gave him kind of smile instead. For this character's face paint, it ended up being a sort of moon with a star behind it. This is partly just from fooling around. You'll also see that I added triangles underneath his eye just to kind of line it and make it pop a little more. But the moon and star idea actually turned out really well because in the story, when you meet the traveling circus, it is at night, and most of their events are held at night, mostly because of the type of magical creatures that they do house. For his hair, I was kind of just toying around the idea with him having just a buzz cut and then some scruff around his face. And that was partly to help me define his face shape because I was having trouble getting the angle I wanted. But I ended up not liking it, and also I wasn't sure how I was going to draw that in my comic to keep with my style, since I usually draw hair and not scruff or buzz cuts. So I ended up going with just some simple wavy hair instead. So this is where I started to think about how I wanted the hat to look. I did add a band around the base of the hat and then some like fabric sticking out of it. Then I ended up adding 3 what will be kind of like cards because I felt like he looked too much like the Mad Hatter at this point. After that, I went and started on the jacket, and I knew I wanted his collar to kind of be sticking up just to make it a bit more dramatic. So I drew a circle around his neck to give me a guideline of where the collar is going to be sticking up at, and then connected it down to the front of his jacket. I then marked where his waist would be and then went over my sketch with a better sketch so it's a little bit less of a mess and more defined. I also slapped on some buttons, and I decided that I wanted the character to have a vest under his jacket, and so I kind of just carved that out of the jacket rather than completely redrawing it. After that, I filled in his shirt with an extra collar, and then of course I gave him a bow tie because bow ties are cool. And then on his shirt I added a little flare because I was looking at pictures of different ringmasters, and a lot of them had those, and I liked it. At least the more elaborate ones with white undershirts, and I imagine him with a striped white undershirt. So to make him a little bit more dramatic, I decided to forego the buttons and add some chains that go across his vest. I just thought they looked better. So that finishes up the jacket, and so I move on to the shoes because I personally find it easier to connect like shoes to the shirt with the pants rather than drawing the pants first and having to put the shoes over those, because I tend to like pants that go into the shoes, and so having the shoes already there makes it easier rather than having to maneuver the pants after while I'm drawing the shoes. So I also wanted to stick with the stripes I have in his shirt and keep it going throughout the design, which is why he has stripes in his pants. So I wanted to give this guy gloves, and I did hesitate because for some reason I wanted him to have white gloves, but then I thought of Mickey Mouse, and so I almost didn't give him gloves, but then I was like, it doesn't even matter. So I gave him gloves and then added on the sleeves, and I didn't want the sleeves to be too dramatic. I originally was about to start heading towards more of a piratey jacket sleeve and had to stop myself. So they're pretty simple with just a little bit of lines on them. So now we're on to the cane, and because I already had it sketched, I kept with it being thin like it is in the sketch, but I did want the top to be a little fancy. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I kind of ended up going with a orb in the handle. At first I was thinking kind of like maybe like an animal, like a basilisk head or something that he's holding on to, but decided against it because I didn't want things to get too elaborate since I am going to have to be drawing this relatively small. With the sketch finished, I go in and do some final tweaking. That includes fixing his jacket because it was sticking out way too far. So I kind of pulled that way in and colored over it red to make sure it stands out. And then I went ahead and started on the line art. And like always, I start with the place that is closest to the foreground, which in this case is the character's hand that's on the cane. So from there, I build out with different sections, going up his arm and then going with his jacket in the middle to kind of section that off. You'll see that some of the details I don't outline, such as the stripes in his shirt, and that's because even though they're in the sketch, I plan to do those with actual color instead of line art, because if I add in all that line art, it would get super crowded in the drawing. I also draw his glasses on a separate layer, that way when I'm drawing his lenses, I can keep it separated and it won't mess up my other line art or colors. And with the line art done, I go into doing the thicker border around the edge. Unlike I usually do, this time I did it in red. That way it's easier to see and I can move quicker than if I was doing all exact with black. So you can see I went in the inside, which I usually don't do. I usually do it on the same layer so I can't go into the line art. But with this, it made it much quicker, and it didn't matter if I didn't get it exact. So for the main colors, I try to stick to brighter colors and a lot of red colors, because when I think of circus, I generally think red, and then the second color varies, I feel like. For this character, I did a few. I kind of stuck to blue, but there are quite a few colors in this. And I knew from the very beginning I did want his shirt to be white, and I wanted his clothes to have a lot of stripes. So when I went in to color his shirt white, I played around with some gray and black stripes. I didn't want them to be super bold, so I went with a dark gray rather than the black. And then I just started filling in the other parts of his clothing. I outlined it in a gold so that way it stood out. Since there was a lot of red, it kind of helped separate the different parts from each other. In this drawing, and at least for the time being, I do keep the stripes in his pants pretty thin. I keep changing my mind on whether or not I want them to be thin like they are now, or if I want to do thicker stripes. So they could possibly change in the future, but for now I just decided to stick with the thinner stripes. For his cane and his shoes, I used the same color gray. It's tinted red a little bit, so that way it's warmer and sticks with the red in the jacket and pants. And for the hat, where I use that darker gray, it's tinted blue, just to kind of help bring out the blue in the jacket, and since there's a little blue fabric in his hat. I thought about giving my character like a darker brown hair, but I ended up going more orange and lighter just to keep it more dramatic and pop a little bit more, and also to match the lenses in his glasses, because I always knew for whatever reason that I wanted him to have orange glasses. And I didn't think they were going to match, but I ended up liking it anyway, which I was really happy about because I didn't want to do another color, but if I had to, I would have. Now at this point, I still wasn't happy with how his jacket was, so I did go back and kind of resketch it out and fix the line art. At this point, it wasn't too hard to change everything because once I fixed the line art, I already had most of the coloring done, so I was able to just like erase and add as I needed to in each layer. For his face paint, I thought about bringing in some more crazy colors just to experiment with, but I ended up just using blue to match his jacket and then orange for the triangles. I didn't want him on a black background with just the mask though, so I added in some triangle shapes to fill in with different colors. I thought about doing a completely different color, but ended up picking more reds just to stick with the theme and so that it's not drawing too much attention from the character. I then used the mask to kind of hide the red just so that it helps the character stand out and isn't quite so overwhelming. After the background, we get to do my favorite part, which is drawing the eyeballs. As you can see, I kind of forgot how to draw eyeballs. So I had to go look at my other characters to see how I did it because I wanted them to be consistent. My first thought was to do how I normally do eyes, which is way too elaborate for a comic book. So that's why I had to check. And after all that, we finally have our finished character. I should say mostly finished. You'll see I forgot to add in the chains on his vest. That's because I didn't want them part of the line art. I actually want to use that yellowy gold color as a separate line layer. That way the chains can be a different color without messing up the line art. I also didn't color in the cards sticking in his hat. That's because I haven't decided what kind of cards I want him to have, but when I do, I'll add them on.